graduation increased from what, maybe 24 up to 28. So we are able to give our kids more advanced standing in college, which is quite a money saver for parents if they can do that. Yeah. There's also the possibility to do more in-house in terms of career and technical ed certification. That's something that we've been working hard on the last 3 years, is basically to get advanced standing at the technical colleges as well.
That makes perfect sense for the kid that's stronger students.
Well, the technical
I'm just not sure it makes much sense to somebody who's struggling all the way through. And I probably would say that mine are more on that edge of middle to below as opposed to the higher, stronger students. And you know, it's good to hear both sides of it, because that newspaper article was pretty clear that, well, this is what we got to do, and it didn't say anything else as to why it won't work or will work. So.
Right. And I think part of that article is that they're going to be in financial straits, and you have to justify why you're going to change your schedule to save money. And it's not good for educators to come out and say, we're changing our schedule to save money. You know, and so I would not look at that as a vote one way or the other truly on whether the block schedules will work. There's lots of research out that talks about the value of the block schedule. You know, I don't know how they're going to save money, because to me a 4-block schedule is an 8-block. So if you go from a 4-block to an 8-period schedule, I don't see how you save money. But that's just me, and I really can't worry about Edgerton's too much in terms of what's really happening in that school district, analyzing it for our district.
Well, we have to.
You have to compare.
Because the general public are going to read that newspaper,
right,
and they're going to compare and contrast, so we do have to focus there.
Right. And I do think one other thing I would add is that the one thing that even if you're going to purchase land for the future, where you would purchase that, even though you could switch that, it would be kind of important to know whether you're going to build elementary schools or middle school. Because in my mind, if you're going to build a middle school, it ought to be close to the high school. It just makes perfect sense. If you're going to build separate elementary schools, you're going to build 2 of them. You know, you want to put those maybe not in the same location. You want to put them out somewhere, and maybe that makes a difference. And I do think that the folks who built the high school, who bought that land many years ago, they bought that land with one thing about, we're going to build a high school here, and they bought it years in advance, and it proved to be a pretty good decision.
So it ended up being a gift
Pardon?
from my ag teacher, I believe.
Oh, only 10 acres was the
Only 10 acres, okay, yeah. So it was actually available land that he had, that
Okay.
gave, and then the rest was purchased.
Let me do a process check here, because I just want to help you understand that while this exercise was difficult and has generated lots of conversation, it has proved to be successful in that it's gotten you to start really digging into what is it that we really need to be thinking about. But I also want to do a process check with the agenda, because we have other items that we want to cover, and some of them pertain to the land that you keep talking about. So I don't want to cut this off, but I'd like to just kind of summarize it from my perspective to say this was just a strong polling to see what type of reaction, what choices you could make at the very front end. And I just want to reiterate that none of this is a cast in concrete choice, so that there's no rumors that get out to the community that a choice has already been made. Because that's not what this is about at all. This was just, is there a way we could refine the options, reduce the number of options that Heidi and her staff have prepared information for? That's all this was about. And what we found out is that, yes, there are some options that at this moment in time may seem more appealing. There's one that may not be. But there's also all kinds of questions that still need to be answered so people could really make an intelligent choice. That's all this was about, and it really got you to dig in and to start thinking about all the different things that we need to cover our bases. Because there's all kinds of information that people are going to be wanting to know if it ever gets to that point. At this point, we don't know if it's going to get to that point. We're still in the very early exploratory stages. So we don't have any rumors rumbling in the community. Okay? So.
If I can make a quick note on that.
Sure.
It's really important for everybody to understand here that, you know, you got to keep a positive attitude on what's going on here in the community for now. If we don't keep it positive now, we just start a wildfire. And all we're doing right now is just simply talking and discussing, and everybody's expressing expressing themselves, and that's a great thing. And we need to communicate that to the people, is that we're just simply talking, we're experiencing other people's experiences, and we're trying to get a grasp on where everybody is in this project.
So, I'm gonna just offer a suggestion, and you can decide if you wanna go forward with this or not. What if we went on to the item about discussing land availability, and at least got an understanding of the smart growth maps of where the city has identified areas and where the town has identified areas? Would that be helpful? Okay. Let's move on to that, and then we'll figure out what our next step is. We had asked Dan and Kendall to be a resource to us as we look at the maps. And Heidi, do you want to just run through the maps that are in that packet?
And if Dan and Kendall can chime in. The first map is not actually the long-term land use map of Evansville, but it'll be pretty easy for you, I think, just to put some stars in the general vicinity of where the smart growth map saw potential school sites. So if you look at Porter Road, which is in the center right, there were potential school sites.
You're on the right.
Sorry, yeah, the other right, thank you. It's on the left in the center, where you see 7th Street coming through. Somewhere west of 7th Street, potentially on either side of Porter Road, looked like a possible area for school sites. I think on the actual smart growth map, it was located on the south side of Porter Road. There would be some concern in terms of slope of the land, and I don't want to get into the whole water discussion, but that's that particular site. There was another one identified, and this one has been out there in various permutations for a while, on Cemetery Street. Again, looking at possible land on either side of Cemetery Street that's vacant, but certainly before you get to the golf course.
So we're talking in the yellow or?
There's talk on both, but I think probably in the yellow. Then there was also conversation.
Well, if you look at that yellow to the east of Cemetery Road, a lot of those streets aren't in there. I mean, they're there, but they've never been built.
Yeah, because Genesis dead ends doesn't even extend around like that to Salvation Way, does it, Raleigh?
There isn't any, Salvation Way
Right.
doesn't go out to Cemetery.
Genesis stops down at the bottom by Countryside.
Yeah.
And Jim, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I was thinking that was Gulf Air, because there isn't a street there yet. No, it could be in that white area between what's listed as Salvation Way and Gulf Air on either side. We've had some conversations, and to take a look at Territorial Road, whether or not any of the landowners on either side of Territorial Road before you get to M would be willing to do some type of donation of land to the school district. And obviously, any school that was built there, virtually every student would need to be bused. But it's been at least discussed. There are schools that have been built without connection to city sewer systems. There's a 400-student elementary school in land close to some of where my family is that's had a mound system for 10, 15 years in the Quantico School District. Another area that we've looked at is just on the other side of Old 92, somewhere between Hine Road and going west on the other side of 5th Street. My understanding from talking with the city administrator is that there's at least some sections of land there where the slope is such that we would not need to add a lift station, which is a pretty significant cost when you're putting together a school. The Cemetery Road sites would most likely need a lift station. And I don't know about Porter, but John, you might know. And that kind of gets us into that next item.
into the infrastructure.
The one thing that you did forget, I guess, would be the transportation issues regarding those different sites. And I would say that Porter Road wouldn't be quite as nice as far as the district as a whole, seems on the west side of the city. There are some other things that might be better. I believe as far as transportation wise, probably Cemetery Road would look better than, say, Old 92, Little Porter Road. Porter Road, I think we got the issue with the municipal services, which there wouldn't be any out there, and it would help to even consider it, I guess.
And quite frankly, Territorial Road, Porter Road, and even possibly north of C, kind of between 5th and Evansville, Brooklyn, because that land might be getting developed. Those sites make some sense if we're talking 1 or 2 elementary schools. The old 92 makes sense if we're talking middle school because of its proximity to high school. So that's really part of where we're hoping we can come up to some kind of consensus here. Is if we're looking at a new middle intermediate site, then we're probably looking at that land on the other side of Old 92. If we're looking at 1 or 2 elementary schools, then we're looking at a site probably more north of town with the idea that how can we do that by, we would build one first to have the least additional transportation costs. And there's lots of ways to solve that problem, but that will probably be the essential question of that problem.
There was a lot of problems with the high school as far as the fact that they couldn't handle the sewage and had that be incorporated into the city. Anything that's involving middle school or high school really needs to have infrastructure associated with it already. So I know you're going to talk about that, but it was pretty, I remember a lot of discussions regarding that. You've been quite an older person at the time, so.
And I wonder, and maybe this is time to kind of segue into, well, let me just kind of finish with going through the maps here. We will get better data to you probably in October, but there's a chart here that gives you the township populations. Right now it's an aggregate of birth to grade 12 that does give you some idea of the number that there are kids in the pipeline, because the total is 2,336. Our current enrollment is about 880. 1880. So that gives you some idea of how many kids are coming up by grade level. Deb, what number do you want me to use?
That
You're clinching at 18.
Yeah, 1827. That 1880 kids.
I thought we were at 1874 on our tentative count. Okay, let's use 1850, somewhere in the middle there.
Okay, and the 1850 is really what?
Grades kindergarten through 12.
Okay.
So if you take 1880 away from the 2336, it's about 500 kids. That's 0 to age 5, because they're 5 when they start school. That's about 100 students at grade level that's there. We don't necessarily always get all of them identified before their preschool age, but that's in the ballpark of our class sizes now. Our class sizes are between 112 and 150.
500 kids spread over
And
12, 13 levels.
when we can get you the age breakdown probably after the submission, right? So you can see how that breaks down by age. When we did our 4-year-old census for who will be in kindergarten next year, we're still coming up with numbers that are between 140 and 150.